Hello and welcome back to the second part of our virtual tour of the D-Day story. My name's James Daly and I'm one of the team who helped put the new displays at the museum together. So while the museum's closed, we thought that we'd take you on a virtual tour and show you some of the displays and some of the highlights. This part of the displays looks at the days and hours before D-Day, when everyone was ready to go, and that's very much where the name came from because it's a phrase that comes up so much. There aren't many objects from this period in time because it's a very narrow period of a few days and hours, but there are lots of emotions which we know about from letters, memoirs and interviews from people who were there at the time. It's one thing that really comes across, the amount of emotion. So that's something that we've tried to get across in this display, that range of emotions on all sides. Things like fear, apprehension, excitement, tension, pressure, all of those different kinds of things. And we've done this with 6 characters who talk to visitors in this part of the museum. Some of the characters are real, while some of them are fictional, but based on real accounts. And we're really lucky in this area because there are so many great letters, diaries, memoirs and interviews that we've got from people who were around at the time that have helped us to build these characters. This photograph here shows Group Captain James Stagg, who was the chief weatherman for General Eisenhower. Weather was obviously very important for D-Day. The naval and air forces in particular needed safe weather to be able to cross the channel and land safely. The air forces needed particular wind, cloud visibility, whereas the naval forces couldn't sail in anything over a certain sea state because it would be too rough and landing craft would capsize. So predicting the weather was a really important thing, and the consequences of getting it wrong could have been quite serious. And to make things even harder for Group Captain Stagg, not all of the Allied weathermen agreed on the predictions, so he had to try and work out between all of them what his prediction would be, and he was under tremendous pressure to get this right for D-Day. Meanwhile, on the other side of the channel, the French resistance were getting ready, and they'd been waiting for the landings for 4 years, since 1940. The French resistance included many women, such as our character here. They were all standing by for a code word that they would hear from the BBC, which would tell them to begin their activities, things like spying and sabotaging the German forces. And this character in the museum actually speaks in French with English subtitles, as we thought that it would be important for her to feel authentic and feel really French. We did wonder whether a French person but talking in English might sound a bit like hello hello, and we think it came out really well hearing a French person talking in French, and the actor was actually French, which we think really helps as well. Also in France, there were thousands of German troops waiting in their defences, wondering when and where the Allies would come. One thing that comes across in accounts from German troops is that they knew the Allies were coming, they just didn't know where and when, so they had this sort of wondering emotion going on. But not all of the German troops were actually German. Many of them came from other countries, and many of them were veterans. They'd already served on the Eastern Front, and until D-Day, Normandy was actually quite a comfortable posting because there was lots of food around, it was nice countryside, and the war wasn't really going on there until D-Day, so it was actually quite a comfortable posting for many of them. Most German soldiers knew the resources and the manpower that the Allies would have, and they knew that once the Allies got ashore, the war would be very difficult for the Germans. But most of them were still determined to fight it out, and given the nature of the Nazi German regime, they didn't really have much choice, because conscientious objection wasn't really something that was tolerated in Nazi Germany. So there was this real sense that although most German soldiers knew deep down how the war was going to end, they didn't really have much choice in how they were going to react, so they were still determined to fight it out. And again, our German soldier here talks in German with English subtitles, and similar to our French character, we thought that this was really important so that it felt like a German character rather than an English character pretending to be German, and we think that again that's worked out really well in this part of the museum here. So that takes us up to just before D-Day itself. Next time we'll be looking at the events of the 6th of June itself, D-Day. Hopefully, though, having looked at the period just before D-Day, you'll have a bit of an idea now of the kind of emotions that people were feeling at the time. So stay tuned for the next instalment of our virtual tour, which will be looking at D-Day itself. But until then, goodbye and take care from all of us at the museum.